And welcome back to A Course in Miracles, episode 12. Today I'm very excited to be joined by my good friend, student of A Course for over 15 years, and fellow forgiveness junkie, Mark Anthony Lord. Mark, thanks so much for joining me today.
I'm happy to be here, Aaron. Glad to be with you.
So I came on your show, your Wednesday night show back in May, and that was really fun. So I told you I'd have you on my show. So now we're even Stevens, but go ahead and give people a little background on you and kind of what it is that you do.
Yeah, and actually, technically, I'm a minister, New Thought minister. I work at a Unity Church in Naples, Florida. But I've been really into spirituality since about 30 years. And I was trained under Michael Beckwith at Abke in Los Angeles. So I was very involved with the Abke movement that he created, founded my own. I founded a spiritual center in Chicago called the Bodhi Spiritual Center. Actually founded 2 centers in Chicago, and those are running and flourishing. And author, wrote a couple books, do spiritual counseling. This is my life. This is really my life.
It really is. And you know what? You have a lot of really great guests on your Wednesday night show. I think recently you had Gary Renard on.
I did.
You've had Michael Beckwith on, I think, a few times. And I think a few weeks ago, the interview that I watched was with Bishop Carlton Pearson.
Yeah.
And I think followers of my channel will probably know, how special Carlton is to me. And so it was really, really cool to see you interview him. And that interview was just sensational. So if you are also a fan of Carlton, then I would highly recommend going over to Mark's channel and checking that interview out. But that being said, today we're going to talk about a topic from the Course in Miracles that I think is probably maybe one of the more esoteric concepts in the Course, and there's many. But, the fact that the Course uses the Christian language to phrase its sort of metaphysical teachings can introduce or maybe bring in some, religious conditioning or religious baggage for people that they're hearing a word like Holy Spirit and referencing the way they were taught and brought up to believe about it, sort of as like the Trinity or whatever, right? So I'd like today for us to kind of talk about what the Holy Spirit truly is as the Course teaches it, and sort of how we can grow into our relationship with Holy Spirit. So the first question I would ask you, Mark, is just basically, what is the Holy Spirit to you?
Yeah. And I love the conversation about the Holy Spirit, by the way. I think it's probably one of my favorite topics within the Course, because I just think I have come to and I appreciate your point about the healing of the words and the usage of the Christian words, which it took me a little bit of time. I'm definitely one of the people that was like, oh, why are they saying he? Why are like I sort of found myself getting stuck, which I'm totally good with. Like, I think that's cool. Like, those are the perfect triggers to keep me moving forward. But the Holy Spirit is like, it has become to me like my best friend, my way shower, like the conversation, the person I talk to, the presence, I should say, inside of me, like the Holy Spirit, to me, which for me is Jesus. And that became that for me when I was in India at an ashram for a month. And I literally walked and talked with Jesus for 30 days. I thought I was losing my mind. I really did. And about 10 days in, I thought, screw it. If I'm losing my mind, I'm losing my mind. Let's go.
Go big or go home, baby.
Seriously. So that was a huge healing for me, by the way. And I don't think I'm alone with people's stuff around Jesus and the conditioning and the crap that's been overlaid on this amazing being. So my heart was truly healed, and my relationship was restored in such a personal, profound way. And ever since then, it's really been a deep connection with Jesus. And I swear it's so personal. It feels like my best friend I can say anything to. And there are moments, like I have those holy instant moments where it's like, it's pureness, it's presence. The colors are a little brighter. It usually hits me when I'm out walking or listening to the Course on my phone. And I have this like opening of stillness where the voice is as clear as your voice. To me, it just is in my head, and it's like, and I'm literally like, whoa, hey, hello. And I swear to you, inside of me, it is a 100% dialogue. It's a living dialogue inside of me.
You know what I
And
call those, Mark?
what?
Those moments? I call them high moments.
High moments. Yeah.
Holy instant moments.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's a real thing, right? It happens. You just sort of click into some space of it, super intense, I don't know, connection with reality or presence. And yeah, it's like a whole new dimension that opens up to you, as the
Yeah.
Course talks about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very profound. It's very beautiful. And I do experience that more and more in my listening and my willingness. The more I'm surrendering, the more
Yeah.
that connection is going. So, you know, the Course talks about the Holy Spirit a lot.
Yeah.
Like it's like all over it.
All throughout the text.
And it is the reason it's a tough conversation is because it requires such a profound surrender. It requires such a letting go. But my path, I entered 12-step recovery when I was 24 years old. I landed in a treatment center almost dead. So for me, the gift of the 12-step program, I think, is what helps me in this surrender game. Because if you've ever tasted life face down, where you have to surrender your game or you will die, you learn surrender at a very deep way. So I feel like the 12-step program was my pre-course to letting go and letting God. And then as I started getting healthier and starting to come alive, it was easier for me to transfer that over to the surrender to the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What a profound story. I think so many people from 12 steps, so many people find the Course from coming out of 12 steps.
Yeah.
And I'm not totally sure about this, but I'm pretty certain that I can't remember the guy's name who came up with 12 steps, but probably used Course in Miracles principles when he was creating that structure, don't you think?
Well, it's Bill Wilson, and
That's right.
he used Sermon on the Mount.
Oh, okay.
That's what it came out of. And Sermon on the Mount is I mean, that's mystical. That's
Oh, yeah.
real mystical teaching. And the fact that, I mean, I really believe the 12 steps in Course in Miracles, man, they are like the second coming. Just boom,
Yes.
you know, like really think about just for a moment, like the 12-step program every single day is saving millions of people's lives. And there was a time when people were only dying.
Yes.
People only dying from addiction. So that's a profound revelation of the Holy Spirit, in my opinion. And I believe, though, the Course is unfolding more slowly because the benefit of 12 steps, I don't want to make this all about that, but the benefit of that, honestly, is, again, like you're gonna die if you don't surrender. There's a lot of us Course students, we still hold on to the illusion that we can keep it together.
Yes.
So it takes a little longer.
Totally. I feel like there's a passage in the Course that talks about that idea that, like, if you knew just how totally helpless you really were, you would surrender everything to God right now.
So yeah, that's my amen.
And maybe the people who hit rock bottom or that face down moment, like you talked about, are almost luckier in a sense that they get introduced to just how broken they really are, and they're met with that decision of, okay, it's do or die, and that's when real surrender happens, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The Course says he seems to be a guide through a far country, for you need that form of help. It's very much the prodigal son story.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I keep going the 12 steps. I guess we're meant to do that. But like, you can't get help until you admit your powerlessness. That's the first step. Is like, you're not moving forward. You can pretend and fake it, but you will not fool this one. You must have that I can't do this moment. And that's when it cracks open. And I crave more of that. And I believe that's what the Course is calling. Like, we're in a far country and I need help, man. And there's sort of a spiritual arrogance that the ego has kind of hijacked the spiritual language. And there's, especially in the New Thought world where I was trained, it was like, God and I are one. I don't need it. I mean, literally, Aaron, like in the New Thought teaching, people would say, I don't need an intermediary. And I was like, if I may, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I need help changing the tire on the side of the road.
Yes.
but I don't need help returning home. Like that's crazy to me, if I can be honest.
Yes. And I would add, here's why that's crazy. Because to say that statement is always arrogance of ego.
Yeah.
And it's never not arrogance of ego, because only a truly fully self-realized master could authentically say, I don't need an intermediary anymore, because they've completely realized themselves as God. But they wouldn't say that if they got to that place, because they don't need to say it anymore.
Right.
So I don't need an intermediary is only ego talking. And I think that's really the predicament the Course meets us at, because the Course talks to you as you, the ego self, sort of as a concession to the belief that I am this separate person, right? And like in non-duality only speaks to you as awareness, you as the source, the supreme being, right? Non-duality doesn't deal with the person. It doesn't even give it reality. But the Course does, because it sort of meets you where you're at. And we need that. We need that intermediary to say, like I often say, the Course in Miracles for me was like that compassionate bitch slap that I was waiting for. It's like, here we are going around like, the world is so cruel and mean to me. If people would just shape up, then I could be happy. Everyone's such a jerk. And the Course is like, hey, sweetheart, you're the problem. It's all going to be fine. We'll figure this out together. And it was like, yeah, I needed that. I needed someone to tell me that I was the problem. I was projecting it all outside of me. And so the Course speaks to us on that level, because it's speaking to the belief that I am this separate person. And until we have the vision of Christ and know ourselves as Christ and only see Christ, we need to be spoken to like that. Right? We're working ourselves out of this conditioning of being a person. So I can almost hear some of the people who subscribe to my channel saying, what do you mean that you need to surrender, Aaron? What do you mean, Mark, that you need to give it all up and surrender because you're nothing? I thought that you tell us that we're God. It's like, you are, but you don't believe it yet. So we're talking to the one who believes you're still separate. Well, that's what the Course does.
Yeah, and there's the paradox. And where there's paradox, there's God for me. So I am all power and I am powerlessness. And if you can hold both of those with enough space for them to exist, that's where like the spirit really can come alive inside. It's another thing, and I'm sure you hear this a lot too, is like, as soon as we get on this is an illusion, this is a dream, like to watch people just
I'm triggered.
Yeah. And then they start arguing with it. And, the thing is, and I've just become, thank you, by the grace of God. Like I really am graceful. I just let it go. And my simple response very often is, that's not what the Course teaches. I just sort of just make it very, well, that's just not what the Course teaches. And if they ask, more cool. But anyway, the Holy Spirit feels like, the Holy Spirit is my guy. I just feel like, even talking about it, I get a little full. Like I get a little, like I get lighter in this.
Well, that's because it's real to you, right?
It's so real. It's so beautiful to me. Another thing that the Course says, and I know you know this, but I love this, that the Holy Spirit is the correction principle. And I love that it's a principle, because you don't argue with principle. It's like the principles of mathematics are just certain, and they're non-negotiable. And you know 2 + 2 is 4, and you can scream to the world 2 + 2 is 5, and you can even get people to agree with you if you can find enough people to do it, but it'll never be true. Right. Principle is principle, and the correction principle means that inherent in the Holy Spirit, there is like that GPS system. I know lots of people talk about it this way, but it's just such a good analogy that it will and does correct every error thought, every false belief. If I will just keep giving it over, I don't have to do the hard work. It's not my job. And I think that's a big shifting. I think for me to move from, one of my favorite sayings is, let the Holy Spirit do the heavy lifting.
Yeah, I love that.
I say that all the time. And I say it to myself all the time when I'm trying to figure something out. I'm like, whoa. What's my job and what's the Holy Spirit's job? And I find more and more my job is smaller and smaller.
Yes. So well said. I love when you say that. You were the one who introduced me to that phrase, um, let the Holy Spirit do the heavy lifting. And
Yeah.
immediately it brings me to this recognition that when we get used to, or in the habit of, or in the practice of allowing Holy Spirit, or the correction principle, do the heavy lifting, eventually we can also let it do the light lifting, right?
Ah, nice.
And then it does all the lifting. And I think that's what Christ was pointing to when he said, come to me and I will give you rest. For my yoke is easy, my burden is light. You will find rest for your souls. We're not supposed to be putting in so much effort to be here doing what we're doing, because we are source experiencing itself. And source is the supreme being. It doesn't waste any energy doing anything. So one of my barometers for my spiritual growth is like, how much energy, how exhausted do I feel spiritually by all this striving and seeking? And if I'm feeling exhausted, that must be the person trying to do it, must be ego trying to enhance itself. So let me just step back for a minute and be in my joy, be in my bliss, be in my love for the divine. And in that place, it's effortless, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And those moments are heaven. Like that to me, like that
Yes.
sense of heaven. And I I pause to say this, but like because I don't want to assess my where I am on the path, but I sort of feel like I may have walked through that invisible gate where
Uh-huh.
there isn't any going back. And I guess let me say it better, like I just want more of it. That's
Yeah.
what I'm aware of. Like, and I feel inside of myself a go-to for it much quicker. And I think that's the blessing. The course talks about shortening time, shortening the time of suffering. And
Yeah.
even a suffering thought, from the time of that to the remembering of calling upon the Holy Spirit, is much shorter within me most of the time.
Yes.
There's still
Almost all the time.
there's still those few that love to grab me, and that's cool too. I don't even judge that. Like,
Yes.
you
No,
know,
you're right. And I like what you said a minute ago about wherever paradox is, God is.
yeah,
Because suffering is like that, isn't it? It's like the course will talk about suffering as if like, um, from the one perspective of, this is totally unnecessary. You're doing this to yourself. You don't need to suffer like this. And that's true from the divine perspective. And then, but from the person perspective, from the ego perspective, every ounce of suffering we experience is necessary, because it's like if you're asleep and you're in a heavy sleep and someone's slapping you in the face until you wake up, it's like, well, if they had to slap you 10 times to wake you up, that's how many slaps it took. But on the other hand, the course is like, yeah, but as soon as you know that the moment you wake up, you don't need to be slapped in the face anymore, then your willingness to wake up is expedited, right?
yeah, yeah.
So that
And
kind of brings us. Go ahead.
it switches to a kiss on the cheek.
There you go. No, it really does actually, because even the slaps were an act of love, right?
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you're in a nightmare, please slap me and wake me up.
yeah, yeah. Seriously, yeah. Help me.
And then we're into the happy dream, as the course would say it.
Yeah.
So that brings us into the next question I was going to ask, and you kind of already began touching on it, which was, what is the Holy Spirit's purpose as the course defines it? And I really like that you use the correction principle, because I was looking at the course last night to pull up some of my favorite sort of passages about the Holy Spirit as the course teaches it, and this is my favorite one that you quoted. This passage is so incredibly powerful, and when we talk about like demystifying the Christian language a bit, and that's what I'm really interested in, is how can we, I love using the term Holy Spirit, and it's very useful, but we also should know exactly what that term is pointing to.
Mhm.
And whatever words we use for it aren't ultimately correct, of course. But I think that from a purely like metaphysical standpoint, I would define Holy Spirit as the aspect of Source's intelligence in us that reveals reality to us, or separates truth from illusion to us.
Mhm.
And so another way you could think of it maybe is, as Source wanted to experience itself and projected its consciousness into the physical universe through this prism of separation, right? As a body in a world with that veil of forgetfulness. I don't remember that I'm the Source anymore. I'm just this person in this world. It has to look through that veil of otherness until it slowly remembers, oh, I am the one reality. I am the supreme being, as Christ recognized. The piercing of that veil, you could say, is performed by what we call Holy Spirit, right? It's the correction principle. It separates illusion from truth. And when we see truth or reality, something in us comes alive, right? We call it resonating. We resonate with truth and go, yeah, that's true. I don't know why I know it's true. I just know it's true. That's Holy Spirit to me. So the passage is from, I think, chapter 9. It says, when I said that the Holy Spirit's function is to sort out the true from the false in your mind, I meant that he has the power to look into what you have hidden and recognize the will of God there. Whew.
Yeah.
His recognition of this will can make it real to you because he is in your mind. And therefore, he is your reality. If then his perception of your mind brings its reality to you, he is helping you to remember what you are. The only source of fear in this process is what you think you will lose. Yet it is only what the Holy Spirit sees that you can possibly have, meaning reality. So it's like only what Holy Spirit reveals to us is true anyways. Yeah. So you might as well get on board.
I love that. Get on board.
Might as well get on board.
You know what you're speaking of, which is beautiful. I also, and I think, I don't know if it calls it specifically this, and of course I'm sure references it at some point, but the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is like the storehouse for the disowned, if you will. It's like the basement of the mind, where it's like, it's just like, imagine there's like the basement's just, there's a hoarder that lives down there collecting all the lies and all the stuff. And it lives underneath inside of us. So we're not conscious of it. So it's easy to go, well, that's not me. Well, that's not true. But that, I don't think that way. That's them over there. That's, obviously how the ego works. But the Holy Spirit is that purifier that will go down into the basement, if you will. I'm just using imagery to kind of say how I see it. It's like it goes down the basement and it will clean, and it will be like, get out of the way. You've been hoarding so much crap down here. This has got to be cleaned out. And it really, like you said, like it's like, keep this, throw that out. Keep this, throw that out. It just, it knows how to do the work. And I've been a lot more. I've got a new prayer program that I'm releasing this fall. And the whole game is about, we begin by asking the Holy Spirit to purify the subconscious mind of the things we don't even know. That grit guilt that lives in the basement floor. Like you don't have conscious awareness of that, but man, can it run the show?
Yes. Yeah. It's like you're up in the kitchen cooking lunch and you have this foul odor coming from somewhere and you're like, oh, this house stinks. I hate this house. Yeah. And it's like, you have no clue your basement's filled with garbage or guilt. That's how the subconscious mind is. Absolutely. It stores all of that hidden shame and guilt that ego invests us with. When we believe we're the doer, we're the person, we're the one who's responsible for everything, then ego just loads us with guilt. And that's why the Course says guilt is the source of all suffering.
Yep.
At the root of all suffering is guilt. And Holy Spirit is that source intelligence in us that illuminates that guilt to us and says, hey, this needs to be forgiven. And actually, I totally botched on the quote that you were quoting was actually this one from chapter 6. It says, talking about the Holy Spirit, he is the great correction principle, the bringer of true perception, the inherent power of the vision of Christ. He is the light in which the forgiven world is perceived, in which the face of Christ alone is seen.
Yeah. I also love, if I may, because Course in Miracles references the Adam and Eve story and talks about the idea that Adam actually never awoke, which has really changed the whole game for me. Story. But the story goes on to say that the moment in the dream that they were expelled from the garden, God placed in the east the flaming sword, and the east metaphysically represents within. And the flaming
Hmm.
sword represents the I am presence. So it's like, and I know you know this too, but like the mad idea, the moment the mad idea was thought, the solution was given. Like they're like
Yeah.
simultaneously. And that allegory points to that in a different way, saying, the moment I believe I'm separate, the moment this dream began, if you will, they're placed in us is the flaming sword, the I am presence, the connection that we can never
Yes.
lose. And that's another name for the Holy Spirit.
Yes. Such a good point. I totally forgot that the Course references the Adam and Eve story,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's kind of where it brings in the concept of the tiny mad idea,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is the belief in separation.
Yep.
And I love your point. As soon as the tiny mad idea was born, the answer was given, and Holy Spirit is that answer, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The beginning of that passage actually says the Holy Spirit is described as the remaining communication link between God and His separated sons.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
amazing is that?
It is. It's good. It's the bridge. It's the way home. It's like, it's easy now.
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, and then believe me, I get in my shit and I get, and I've got my prayer partners. I got my people in my circle that I lean into. I feel like that's really, I am one of the gifts that I've been given lately that I love is like, I'm much later on myself around feeling bad about what I'm thinking or feeling like, oh, I'm really having a messed up thought right now. I used to really sort of, the ego would activate the guilt and shame and I would go hide and pretend. Now I just out it. Just, oh, I'm having this crazy thought, like, because if I can share it and come together with a brother or sister in prayer or in spiritual practice, there's so much, that coming together is where there's so much healing.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I, in terms of, the Course talks a lot about the power of your brother, and
yeah,
we join hands and walk home together. I think that's because people serve as our mirrors to God. They serve as our mirrors to ourselves. And so I think one of the passages says, it's impossible for you to overestimate your brother's value.
yeah, yeah,
See him as separate and you are in hell. See him as one with you and you are in heaven. It's like that. And that's where all of spirituality is right there.
yeah.
That's as simple as it gets, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And I think, my particular conditioning, my childhood was very, very rough. And so I had to me to survive, I had to pretend and I had to lie and I had to create a lot of false selves. And that was
Yeah.
survival mechanisms for me. And I think a lot of people can relate to that growing up in more violent homes. And so peeling that away for me, the healing is in the opposite, which is to speak my truth, to not, instead of hiding what I'm thinking and feeling, flip it over and share
Yeah.
it with someone. Because wherever I can connect, wherever I can have connection, to me, that is the Holy Spirit in action, connecting to you, connecting to anyone, just whatever the truth of my experience is where we begin. And then the Holy Spirit can begin to unravel it. But if I'm not even going to be honest about where I am, the Holy Spirit's not going to have a chance.
Excellent point. That brings me to the next question then, of how does the Holy Spirit speak to you? Maybe you can give us some examples of maybe even like memories you have of a moment where Holy Spirit really came through and gave you the message you needed in that moment. How does that happen for you?
Um, you know, I like I mentioned earlier, like I started, I do have a dialogue, and I've come to over the years know, like, sometimes when I'm listening, I'm like, is this the Holy Spirit's voice? And I can just pause, and I can even get a no, not now is the time for this conversation. Like, I really have a lot of clarity. I believe we all do, by the way. I'm not unique on this. I believe we're perfectly wired for communication with the Holy
Yes.
Spirit and with the divine. So that is really my number one modality. I pray so much, morning, noon, and night. I really do. And when I just pay attention to my thoughts more, I'm listening, and I've gotten better at, uh, when I'm feeling off. When my body's feeling sick or my thoughts are starting to spiral down a rabbit hole, I'm better at being the observer of
Mm-hmm.
that. And because I'm observing, I'm able to call upon the Holy Spirit. But an actual experience, God, for some reason my mind is blank, but I've had everything from internal knowings to kind of fun ways that it shows up. When I was moving down to Florida to take this job, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if this is for me. And that was really like, Holy Spirit, I need a sign. I need, and I believe that the Holy Spirit just loves me so much and is willing to help me as much as I'm willing to see it, receive it. And I had gone to lunch with a friend to say goodbye. And I got in my car. I was living in Chicago, and the car was parked in front of me, parallel parked. And their license plate was Florida license plate. The surrounding was Naples. And the three letters on the license plate were PWZ, which is my partner's initials. So,
Whoa.
I don't like to look for those magical kind of things in the universe. And yet at the same time, I do believe the universe is talking to us
Mm-hmm.
in multiple ways. So I would say that's one of my big signs where I was like, okay, I surrender. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like sometimes the Holy Spirit whispers and sometimes it shouts.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
For me, it's as simple as, I think we talked about earlier, the idea of sort of arguing with reality is insanity. For any reason, if you're arguing with reality, you are insane in that moment. And for me, Holy Spirit shows up, how many hundreds of times a day where I'm in resistance to something, or there's some subtle kind of irritation in me. And it's almost like a gentle voice, a loving voice says, let me remember that I am arguing with reality right now. And that is insane. Do I want to be insane? No, I do not. Just like, oh yeah, thank you for that little reminder.
Yeah.
And, it's so intimate. It feels like my own self doing it. Like, oh, I remembered it. And it is my divine self. But, the ego wants to take credit for it. And it's like, yeah, it's all grace. It's all a gift from grace. Grace is coming down to kiss us over and over again if we just open our hearts to it, surrender to it, and allow the voice of reason, as the Course would say, to speak to us. The Holy Spirit is that voice of reason that's just always reminding you, just little taps. And it's only going to give you the little taps or the little whispers to the degree that you have that willingness for it to. If you're turning against it, then it's not going to infringe on your free will and like kick your front door down to tell you what truth is. So it's up to you to make that first step towards God in a sense. And the second that you do, God takes that step towards you. But I think probably my favorite line in the Course about the Holy Spirit is the one that says, Holy Spirit speaks with unmistakable clarity and overwhelming appeal. Right? Nobody who does not identify with the body could possibly be deaf to his messages.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, that's it, right? Let me remember who I am, and that the voice of truth is always there to meet me.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. You stated a perfect equation, and you got to do that. You got to state it again. That what did you say? Can you back up to that?
Which part?
Really, I love when equations reveal themselves. You have a perfect equation that you go to.
Which one was it?
It was about the insanity.
Yeah, if I am arguing with reality, I am insane.
Yeah. Do I want to be insane?
Do I want to be insane? No.
No. That's
all you need.
I know, that's an equation right there. This plus that equals that. Like, there it is.
I never thought about it that way. An equation.
Yeah. I mean, there's the equation in the Course with there's love. I'm not exact quote, but there's love and fear. Fear is not real. Therefore, there's only love. That's an equation.
Yeah. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists equals herein lies the peace of God.
Right?
That's brilliant, man.
Yeah. Well, you stated one. I was like, oh man, that's a good equation. Byron Katie also says it really well. She just simply says, argue with reality, you lose every time.
Yeah, I love that quote.
Yeah.
I think sometimes she'll say it like, when I argue with reality, I lose, but only all the time, or something like that. But only every single time.
Yeah. I got to spend 3 days with her in a small group of like 15 people. Man, that was trippy.
No way.
Yeah, it
How
was
did you
so
get that?
just on my journey, a group of
Man,
friends,
you've
like
been
we
with
just
you've been with almost all my favorite teachers, man. I'm jealous. I gotta hang out with you more.
well, I got a few years on you.
I'll catch up eventually.
Yeah, you will. For you'll surpass. You'll surpass.
We'll see. We'll see. Final question, Mark. What can we do? What can anyone listening to this do to begin becoming more sensitive to Holy Spirit's voice?
Um, I'm going to go back to the idea of we need to begin with that full surrender. We need to really place ourselves in the posture and the position of willingness. And I really believe if you want it, and I still do this, like not every day, but start your day on your knees in prayer. And there's something so, again, that was old school Catholic stuff for me that I was like, no way am I going to get
Mm.
down on my knees. But now getting on my knees physically represents the willingness. So something happens to me
Yeah.
physically. And I usually do it in the shower, truth be told. Like it's just perfect. The water's coming down on me.
Yeah.
It's like I'm just going to get dropped to my knees for a moment and ask. And there's something around the humility of that. If you, I really like, let us know, let Aaron know if this works, but like 21 days, start your day on your knees and just
Mm.
ask the Holy Spirit to have your day. I love to say, Holy Spirit, use my heart, use my hands, use my voice, use my smile,
Mm.
use all of me today to be of service.
Wow.
Like, even if it's just words in the beginning, even
Right.
if it's only this deep in the beginning, it's like you got to start digging
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yep.
And so that's what I would say. Like, I would just say, begin on your knees. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy for some people to hear, but that's what I would suggest.
Well, if it's not easy for them to hear, that's definitely what they need the most then.
Well, there you go. I don't need to worry about that.
I think that's what the Course means when it talks about the little willingness.
Yeah.
It's like, just give the Holy Spirit a little willingness and watch what he'll do with it.
Yeah.
I think that's why the idea, I love what you said there about surrender. I think that's why surrender is so powerful, is like we touched on earlier. You are God. You and your Father are one, but you don't know that you are. You believe you are this separate person.
Yeah.
And how do you know you believe it? If you're still suffering, right? If you don't have the total unbroken peace of God at every hour of the day, then you don't fully recognize who you are yet. And so that act of surrender, of going face down, of kneeling before the altar and just saying, I am nothing without you. That's so powerful because that's actually you laying down that false identity.
Yeah.
Saying, this isn't real. I don't give any reality to this. This is nothing. This is powerless. This is useless. And you alone are my source. You alone are my life. And that is when we begin to make that transition into realizing, oh, I am, I and my Father are one. But only when we surrender the false can we have the true, right?
Yep. Yep. So that's, yeah, definitely. I also have a guided meditation. I'll shoot this to you, but where I call it, leave it at the altar of the Holy Spirit. It's about 7 minutes long. I just guide people and I get them to imagine walking through an open field and seeing an altar and just kind of picking up rocks. And I put my relationship on the altar. I put my money on the altar. I put my career on the altar.
Wow.
And it just sort of inside me and then the final one's just scoop up a whole envelope full of rocks, put them on the altar, step back, open your arms. And so it's just a good guided visual experience to help in the surrendering.
Oh man, I love that. We'll definitely put that in the show notes to this video. I
Yeah,
think that'll be
that'd be
helpful.
awesome. I'll send you a copy, a link of it.
That would be great. Wow, man, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I love hanging out with you, Aaron Abke.
Likewise, brother. I'm glad that you, I guess, found me on YouTube one day and invited me on your show, because now we became pen pals almost across the country.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking back. I'm like, I'm not even sure how that all. Yeah, I mean, really. I mean, to me, that's the Holy Spirit, because I don't know. Just happened to I'm like, hey, this dude's cool. I watched some of your videos. I'm like, hey, come join me. You were like, all right. And then, it's just like, I figured that would be it. And it's just been a nice friendship combined with such a passion for our paths.
Yeah, man. I think anytime I come across somebody, which doesn't happen often, who has really been transformed by the course the way I have, there's just an immediate sort of like kindred spirit there, right?
Yeah.
A connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's more and more people, I believe, in the coming years going to be waking up through this amazing text.
A
And the love.
100%. I can't agree more. I think as time goes forward, this text will become even more and more relevant to our collective.
Yeah.
Anything you want to plug before we go?
Instagram, Mark Anthony Lord. Come follow me. Be awesome. That's where I post my stuff, my classes, my inspiration, what's happening at Mark Anthony Lord.
And you have your alchemical prayer course coming up soon, yeah?
I do, yeah. It's posted on my Instagram. You can find out about it there. It starts October 1. It's a 6-week virtual class. And, I've got a dear friend, Panache Desai, who is also like one of our brothers. She's been on Oprah, and really like I can't wait to bring you two together because you both have had young awakening experiences.
Yeah.
We were sitting in this house one day and this whole download of why prayers aren't answered, praying to external God versus from oneness in the consciousness of heaven. And it just sort of evolved into this prayer process where it's about a 15-minute process of aligning with the Christ light, forgiveness, using the chakras to purify the subconscious mind of all the ways we've projected out our power, our grace, our good, and getting into alignment, kind of creating a vortex within. And then in the center of that, helping people learn how to pray. So I'm excited about it.
Man, it sounds amazing. I'm super excited to check it out when it comes out. And to that point, you were kind of somebody who brought prayer back to my life as a spiritual practice. I grew up doing it every single day. Prayer was my only spiritual practice besides reading the Bible. And then when I came out of Christianity, just kind of dropped it by the wayside and haven't really thought of picking it back up. And then, when you and I started hanging out and talking, you're all about prayer. You wanted to always close with a prayer. And It sort of brought that back of like, wow, actually there's a lot of power to this practice that I've been missing out on. And so I'm really excited to check out your program. And I think that anyone who follows my channel will be deeply blessed by it as well. So we'll put the link to that in the description box below, as well as your Instagram and all that good stuff. And man, just want to thank you again, Mark, for joining me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. It really has.